your distance and make a big difference now.
Learn more about vaccines at cdc.gov/coronavirus. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents
And Doug.
Okay, class, let's bump it up to 9.
Come on, Limu, keep pedaling. We got to build our endurance to let more people know that Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Pick up the pace, bird legs.
Hey, don't talk to Limu like that.
I'm not, I'm talking to you.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Get a customized quote at libertymutual.com.
The Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
That AM 1400 KVFD.
I'd like to confess, I think we got about 8 inches of snow last night. That's the first major winter storm that we have. That was a good old winter storm from South Carolina. Now we bring into the conversation our news and sports director, Rob Jones. This is your second winter here, Rob.
It is, and that one was pretty intense last night. Sure was.
Did you take pictures of it and send it to the folks back home?
I did, actually. I did, yeah.
And they said, what the hell are you doing out there?
A couple of people's like, oh, it's so pretty. I wish we got more snow. I was like, I'll trade it.
Yeah, well, it is pretty, but you get over that fast.
You do, like you really do. And I try to explain to them, like growing up there, you know, I didn't realize how beautiful it was there until I went somewhere else,
That's
right? It was the same thing. It's like here, yeah, the snow is beautiful at first or whatever, but about that third or fourth day and it still hadn't went anywhere. And now it's a big old ice block and all that. Like it's not that beautiful after that. And it's not that beautiful when you can't drive back and forth to home because there's 8 inches of snow on the ground.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I went out the Carolina coast. I'd already been to the Pacific coast a couple times,
right?
But the Carolina coast, I went out there and I just stood there and looked at the ocean, and it was so. I was probably in a different time of life. I don't know. Maybe that probably had a lot to do with it.
Was you at a different elevation?
I was at a different. Yes, I was, right?
That'll do it too. You'll stare at a lot of stuff.
There was an old song called 8 Miles High that I used to think was my theme song. So I get up there in the mountains over Big Bear, California, and I was 20 miles. But anyway, we don't want to go back there. If you remember the 70s, you probably weren't. If you remember the 70s, you know what I'm talking about. But I don't think anybody really remembers the 70s.
You were either there and don't remember what happened, or you weren't there.
Well, that's what Kevin Crimmins says. If you remember what does he say? If you remember the 70s, you weren't there, or some doggone thing. I don't know what it is. Anyway, Rob Jones is our sports guy, of course, and he'd just soon not do the news. I think he'd just stick with sports, and I understand that all the way. We're going to kick off with the national sports here. I was a little surprised that Tampa Bay beat Green Bay. But Tom Brady, 43 years old, still looks like he can play ball with anybody.
He does. And, you know, he wasn't great against Green Bay, but he was good. And he was good enough to win the game. And he's the kind of guy that everybody else around Tom Brady believes in Tom Brady, and he can elevate everybody else because of that belief. So it didn't really surprise me. You and I talked a couple of weeks ago, and I told you then that, you know, when the playoffs started, I felt like Tampa Bay is going to go all the way, and I think they're going to win the Super Bowl.
They very well might, but they got a pretty tough team there.
They will.
They got a real tough team there. I'll tell you, the Chiefs, man, did they plan for Buffalo Bills? They didn't let Josh Allen do anything.
Yep.
And as a matter of fact, the Buccaneers were ready for Aaron Rodgers too. They put a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, I think they sacked him 5 times.
Yeah, they did, and he didn't. Rodgers didn't have much time to get the ball off, and Brady had a little more. Brady's great years were with New England, of course.
Sure.
And God, I remember watching him and being so impressed by that pocket that would form around him. You know, he's still an old school drop back quarterback. And if you have someone with Brady's accuracy and a strong pocket, man, you're going to win a lot of games. And they did, you know, they did.
And he's so good at what you would call throwing a guy open, which means he's throwing it to a spot where only his guy can get it. Mm-hmm. You know, a guy will be covered, but if he'll throw it to a certain angle in a certain spot where his guy can go down and get it or go up and get it, depending on the route. Mm-hmm. And he's probably the best that's ever been at doing that. I mean, he
Yeah.
could throw a guy open. He's been doing it all this time. He can still do it. And we saw examples of it. Now, you know, he did throw 3 interceptions. He wasn't, by Brady standards, he wasn't great.
No, you're right.
But he was still good in that situation. And I think those guys around him believe no matter what, that Tom Brady can get them a win in any situation. I think they believe that going into Green Bay. And that's a really hard place to play. That may be the hardest place to play in all of pro football.
Oh, man, I drove by that stadium a couple of times years ago. In Green Bay, I'll tell you that there's a lot of mining going on around there. It's a working town. It's a working class town.
Right. Blue collar town.
Oh, real. And it's up there in coal country. There ain't no doubt about it. So to have Brady, Brady did play all those years in New England. It gets cold up there too.
Sure.
But it does affect your play.
Well, and he hasn't been in the cold weather in a little while. I mean, he was in New England, but
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like he was in New England last week. You know what I mean? That was last year.
That's right.
And they do have a couple of guys like him and Gronk and some other guys that have played in cold weather situations. So, you know, I didn't think that was going to bother them as much as a lot of people thought that was going to bother them, and it really didn't. Because it's not where the team's based, it's where those guys have been. Are they acclimated to that kind of climate? And Brady's had that background, and he, you know, so is Gronk and some of those other guys on that team.
He played ball at Brady played college ball at Michigan too.
Yeah, yeah.
Not a warm spot.
Right. Not a warm weather climate. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, Rob Jones is our guest. Are you going to pick Tampa Bay to win the Super Bowl?
I am in a close game, probably a field goal game.
All right. Mahomes was a little iffy, but I think he's got enough time to come back. It's not a regional choice on my part. I've always had trouble liking Kansas City from the shock and trauma of the Kansas City beating the Vikings in 1970. I know. I hold a grudge a long time.
You still haven't got
I still haven't got over that yet. You know, the Vikings were 16-1 favorites.
Was that Fran Tarkenton?
No,
Vikings?
that was Joe Kapp.
Okay.
That was Tarkington did play for the Vikings. I saw him when I was on a little grainy black and white TV. I know I'm going way back before your time, but he would dance all over the field. He would run all over the field and then throw a pass for 25 yards, and that would result in a 4-yard gain, you know, because he was so far behind the line of scrimmage.
True. You know, he's still really revered where I come from, too, because he played college ball at Georgia.
Sure he did.
So, you know, he's really revered, and I never got a chance to meet him, but I know that he was a big deal back in that part of the country, too.
Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Mahomes, and he really is great. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from the guy. He's coming back from injury, and he's an incredible player. To me, what we have in the Super Bowl in terms of the quarterback matchup is kind of the classic Western movie, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the old gunslinger who's looking for one last hurrah, and you've got the new guy who's the new hot gunslinger, if you will, in town. Now, who's gonna win that matchup? Well, we're gonna find out. I like Brady one more time. I think Mahomes is the next guy in line to be the best quarterback in the NFL. But I think Brady, to me, he's the greatest of all time. So I'm going to go with Brady this one last time. I think he wins it. They win it together. And I think he rides off in the sunset. And I think he should have did that when they beat Atlanta, when the Patriots beat Atlanta a few years ago, where they came back and they were down like, 25 points or 28 at half or whatever it was. And they came. I was sitting there thinking, I was like, this would be the perfect storybook ending. This guy just brought his team back. This is the greatest comeback I've ever seen in the Super Bowl. They win it. You know, he was at that time in his late 30s. So go ahead and ride out, you know, and be done with it. Right off in the sunset, go out on top. And I think he's got a chance. I think he's been looking for that chance to get back to the top one more time and prove he can still do it. And I think he's got a chance to do that. And I think the week off between this past weekend and the Super Bowl, I think that really benefits Brady. I think it'll benefit Mahomes some too to get healthy, but I think it benefits Brady more because of his age.
Now, we're going to, by the way, this is AM 1400 KBFT with our news and sports director, Rob Jones. Are we going to have this wrestling meet tonight or?
Fort Dodge, no, it is canceled.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, it's
Fort
canceled.
Dodge and Marshalltown.
Yeah, Fort Dodge and Marshalltown wrestling is canceled tonight. All activities for Fort Dodge are canceled, so no basketball game at Southeast Polk tonight. St. Edmund is canceled tonight. They were going to be on the road at Iowa Falls Alden. That's canceled. South Central Calhoun also had a game on the schedule tonight at home against West Bend Mallard. That also is canceled tonight, and all three of those teams are looking at makeup dates right now. We don't have any announcements on the makeup dates yet, but we'll find out.
St. Edmund had a tough week here from the looks of things. Friday they were supposed to play Humboldt. Is that game still on?
This coming Friday they are scheduled to play Humboldt still, yes.
And that game is still on the schedule. And
yes, and so is the Thursday game against West Bend Mallard. They did have a 3-game week.
They are going to have the Thursday game.
Well, I mean, it's on the schedule still.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll see when we get to Thursday. We got to go day by day around here.
We
Mike.
really do.
We really do.
We really do.
They had a rough go of it Saturday. St. Edmund did at home against Clarion Goldfield Dow's. I had those games. Remember, I told you I didn't know if KC was going to be able to make it Saturday or not. Well, KC couldn't make it, so I filled in. Clarion beat them in the girls and the boys game. Clarion Goldfield Downs has got good teams on both sides, and their girls are a little bit more little veteran leadership, and they've got some really good players. And I thought St. Edmund competed with them. And then in the boys game, St. Edmund kind of had a bad matchup. Clarion Goldfield Dow's has a lot of size and athletic ability for a school that size with their boys team. They had a couple of bigger guys that were athletic, and then they had a little guard who really was super quick, could shoot the ball. And so Mateo Martinez, if anybody is looking for the name there, that kid can really play from Clarion Goldfield Dow's, and he had a big game, and that really hurt St. Edmund there. And they had guys who are good players that didn't play well.
Right.
And that, when you have 2 or 3 good players that don't have a bad game or don't have a big production game for you all at the same time, I mean, it just kind of snowballs on you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is AM 1400 KBFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Are the Dodger girls doing they were 3-7 a while back.
That's what they are.
They still are.
Yeah, they beat Urbandale to go to 3 wins, and then they lost to Ankeny to go to 7 losses. So they're 3-7 after a split week. They were supposed to play Southeast Polk tonight, which Southeast Polk is really good. I mean, their girls are ranked number 4 right now. Their boys are ranked number 10. I mean, they're really good. That was going to be a tall order tonight. Friday, the Ames game on the road is still on the schedule for right now. So we'll see when we get there. But that's going to be a challenge. For both the girls and boys, probably more so for the boys because the Ames boys are kind of loaded. They've got Taman Lipsey, who's a Division I recruit, has offers from Iowa State and Minnesota, Nebraska. They're pretty loaded. The girls are pretty good too. They've got a couple of Division I signees, one that's going to Bradley, one that's going to Drake. That's about all they have. So if you can slow them down at all, you've got a chance. And the Dodger girls played them tooth and nail up here the first time and lost to them by 4. So we'll see if they're able to maybe scratch one out on Friday night.
I hate to see an Iowa team get a whooping from anybody from Oklahoma, but we got one.
Oklahoma State put it on the Cyclones.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Which, Cyclones are depleted right now, too. I don't want to make excuses for them, but, I mean, they're
having a terrible year. I don't know what the deal is.
Well, last night they only had 6 scholarship players due to injuries and COVID and other stuff.
Is that right?
Yeah. So they had a tough time of it last night. Of course, Oklahoma State was without Cade Cunningham, too, who's their best player.
Right.
So
what happened to him?
I don't know. I just know he wasn't in the box score. I was expecting him to play. I didn't really read up on what was going on with that, but he wasn't in the box score. And I know if he wasn't in the box score, he didn't play. So I don't know what happened there, but they were able to put it on Iowa State. And, they are having a rough year. I'm going to be honest. Like Steve Prom, I think might be out at the end of this year. I
think so?
I think it's a possibility. I mean, they've shown decline over years with him instead of incline. And I think now it's really declining. They've won 2 games.
Yeah.
And one of those games was Jackson State. I mean, You know
Jackson
what I mean?
State's a pretty small school.
It is. That's a pay me game. Jackson
Yeah.
State takes a payoff for you to come up here and get
Play.
beat.
Yeah.
I mean, they do. All schools. That's how they
All-
fund their athletic department.
That's
Schools that
right.
size.
That's right. Well, you know, the Cyclones and Hawkeyes and bigger schools, and even Clemson, there's no doubt. And Alabama, they'll take on a couple of real small schools at the beginning of the year.
Yep, give them a check and a butt
Give
whooping
them a
and send
check
them
and
home.
a little practice, too. Yeah, it didn't work out so well for Michigan a few years ago when they took on Appalachian State.
That
and
was the
got
wrong
beat.
one to do
That
it
was
to.
the wrong one.
That was the wrong one to get. It really was because they were really good at that time too. Armani Edwards played in the NFL, played quarterback for them, played receiver in the NFL for the Carolina Panthers. For a
He
while.
did.
Yeah, he was a tremendous athlete. So yeah, they picked the wrong one, but usually that's one of those deals where you know you're going to have a couple of those. You know you're going to have them. So like Clemson, they usually try to do it with in-state teams, like they'll do it with like Citadel or
Mhm.
Furman or somebody like that, so they can
Mhm.
keep the money in the state.
Yeah.
But, you know, going back to Iowa State, Steve Prohm, to me, I never been that big of a fan of his or really enchanted by him. He was pretty good at Murray State. You know, he wasn't bad, but Murray State was one of those programs where Billy Kennedy already really had them rolling, and Prohm just had to kind of take over and not mess it up. And for a couple of years, he was able to win with Billy Kennedy's players. And I think it made him look a little bit better than what he was. And then he got that job, you know, in Ames.
Well, I'll tell you, Prohm stepped into some mighty big shoes in this state. Fred Hoiberg in this part of the state.
The mayor.
Yeah, the mayor, he was more than the mayor to a lot of people. He might have been the senator or even the president,
probably-
maybe even God. I don't know.
He probably could run for Congress or Senate and win.
Well, he went over to Nebraska, so he lost my vote.
Well, he could have before he went to Nebraska.
Who's the big rival with Clemson?
South Carolina.
South Carolina?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But they're so much better in South Carolina.
Well, they are now, but they haven't always been. When Dabo first took over, he couldn't beat South Carolina.
Really?
When Spurrier was at South Carolina, he ran off 5 or 6 in a row against Clemson.
Spurrier was one of those guys that was a great college football player. He really was.
And a great college football coach.
But he just couldn't play in the NFL.
It happens.
It does a lot.
He was also really good against his rivals. If you look at like even going back to his time at Florida, like he usually always beat Georgia. He usually always beat Tennessee.
Yeah.
You know, they're division rivals. At South Carolina, he had a pretty good record against Clemson. Better record than pretty much anybody else ever had at South Carolina against Clemson. Like, he was always good in beating his rivals in those situations, which is something that makes you a great coach. Guys like Urban Meyer's like that too. Urban Meyer never loses in a rivalry.
We the fans of the state of Iowa and the Iowa Hawkeyes had to put a little bit of a bug in Kirk Ferentz's ear a few years ago because he was playing Minnesota, and of course we always have a trophy that goes.
Yeah,
back
the Florida
and forth.
Rosedale.
There you go. And we got beat on a screw up by the coach. In the post game conference, he came out looking like he'd taken a couple of second all or something. You know, he just really kind of bored to be there. And somebody said that was kind of a screwed up play there that lost the game for the Hawkeyes. And Kirk's response really was, "That's football." And then the Hawkeye fan base came apart. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's never really Mr. Excitement. Like I listened to a lot of his post game or his press conference stuff, and he never really gives you the feeling of, wow, this guy's excited to be here.
Right.
Like he's jacked up. He's just not that kind of guy.
No.
You know, and for me, it's totally different because, you know, for the first few years of Dabo Swinney, I covered his press conferences, and it was like a guy bouncing off the wall. I mean, on Tuesday, he's ready to play now. Like, you know, he's all over the place.
Yeah,
so
well, Urban Meyer was that way down in Florida. And I really think that's why he temporarily retired from the game. He was in his 40s. I think it was having health problems because he lived and breathed the football program. I mean, he'd be out in the coach's office from 6 a.m. till 11 or 12 at night, you know.
True.
Yeah.
You know, they're the conspiracy theorists. I don't know if they're right or wrong that say that coincides with Florida kind of falling off, because they were falling off whenever he announced that, and kind of, you know, that was after the whole Tebow era at Florida. So,
I just don't think that. I mean, there's people going to speculate. I speculate.
Yeah.
That's part of what we do as sports fans. But I would disagree with that. Urban simply wouldn't take that. You know, he wouldn't. He's so competitive that he's going to find a way to bring the team around again, if that's what's it. I mean, he's just not going to sit there and let it go. In Florida, still at that time, you could recruit to Florida.
Oh, yeah.
How you recruit to Minnesota or Iowa, I don't know, because it's cold up here a lot of the time.
True.
But I'm glad that we do. Kirk Ferentz is a great recruiter in Florida, in the state of Florida.
He also, he gets pretty much the top in-state guys too. I mean, him or Iowa State. Matt Campbell's going to start getting a lot of them too with their success. But you don't hear about an Iowa kid going out of state very often. That's different from what I'm used to, because from where I'm from, you'll hear about a South Carolina kid go to Georgia or Auburn or Tennessee, or and they'll get kids from there too. So it's a little bit different deal with that. But yeah, and PJ Fleck has done a good job of recruiting like Texas and Oklahoma and those areas too for Minnesota. A couple of years ago when they had that good run at Minnesota, kind of put PJ Fleck on the map there at Minnesota. Some of his better guys were from Texas. And I used to think, man, he's got to be, you listen to him talk and you just get fired up and you just can believe in the guy. And you got to be a kid, because he had a kid from down around Houston, Woodlands, Texas.
Right.
And that kid drove past 12 schools he could have played at to get to Minnesota to play for PJ Fleck.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason. I've been to the Woodlands, Texas. It's nice. It's really nice. Like
down by Houston, right?
Yeah, there's no
very
reason.
nice. A high school classmate of mine lives in the Woodlands area.
Yeah, it's a nice place, man. It really is. I mean, on the north end of Houston, that's probably the nicest place you're going to find. And so, yeah, to leave there and to go to Minnesota, like, you got to believe in what the guy's selling you, and they obviously do.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, as long as we have mentioned Urban Meyer, apparently he's going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's going to take
Trevor Lawrence
of Clemson.
Oh, I have not heard that.
Yeah, right. Some say that Trevor will benefit from having Urban Meyer as a coach. And I think that's the reason a lot of people speculate. Again, here we are speculating that the chance to get Trevor Lawrence was the reason, one of the big reasons that Urban Meyer went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I always...
Is it official that he's went to the Jaguars? Because
no,
I haven't.
It's not official. They haven't had the draft.
Okay. But I mean Urban Meyer. Is it official that he's the coach of the Jags? Because I haven't even seen that.
Come to think of it, neither have I. There was all that speculation, and he was, he's apparently in final talks with Urban Meyer.
Okay. So they're in discussions.
Right.
Okay.
But apparently he can't. I never thought he could stay away from the game.
Yeah, he probably can't. And he's pretty much done everything you can do in a college game. So it would make sense for him to go to the pro.
Yeah, he's in his 50s now, and he's done college ball at a couple different places, Florida and Ohio State, of course. I was unhappy to see him go to Ohio State. I thought when they had that little bit of trouble with their other coach who got dismissed. Who was that guy, John?
Jim Tressel.
Jim Tressel, yeah. I thought, good, we're going to be able to beat the hell out of Ohio State anytime we feel like it now. But here comes Urban, and screwed that whole thing up. But anyway, no, I haven't heard that, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't even been paying attention to it.
Does anybody out there in Radio Land know if Urban Meyer has signed a contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars? When is the draft anyway?
The draft will be in April, I think, either April or May. I can't. They moved it a few years ago, and I can't remember which one, but it's April or May.
Okay. Wow, that's kind of late, isn't it? I mean, if you're going to get a draft pick and he's going to start with your team, the season starts at the end of August usually.
Well, yeah, he'll come into camp and all that, the OTA camp at late July, and get going from there.
All right. Rob, what else do we need to say about sports? Anything, or we covered it all?
I think we've covered it all pretty much going on. Of course, I do want to mention, postseason wrestling is right around the corner, Mike.
Yes,
so
sir.
We're going to have a lot of that. I can announce, I told you last week I couldn't announce who was doing state for us because we were still negotiating that. I can go ahead and give you the announced teams for what we're going to be covering in terms of postseason wrestling. Our state team will be Teresa and Tom Hildreth. Teresa's a longtime wrestling broadcaster knows it in and out. Tom is a National Wrestling Hall of Famer, former coach over at Rockwell City Lytton. So they're going to do state for us. They'll also do the 1A sectionals, which will be in Ogden. That has South Central Calhoun will be in that, East Sac County, St. Edmund. I think West Bend Mallard as well be there. So they'll be there to do that. Carl and Darren Lagore, who did some wrestling for us last year.
Carl Lagore.
There's
a name from the past.
Yeah, and Calhoun County supervisor. Used to be in radio. Well, last year we had recruited Darren Lagore to work with us to do wrestling, and ended up needing a guy. And he said, "Well, hey, my brother used to do radio," and I didn't know him because I'm not from here. I don't know.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So I was like, okay, and so he brought him in, and I'm hearing them work, and I'm like, guy can work, like, so I called him back this year. It's like, hey, we want the Lagore brothers back if you guys want to do it. And they were like, yeah, we'll do it. So they're going to do
outstanding.
Yeah.
Big Papa Gore is going to be back on the I knew him when he
and-
was just a kid a long time ago. He'd get crazy on the radio. As I recall, he got a little too crazy and he had to join the army. But
So those two guys, the Lagore brothers, will have the 1A sectional from Manson on February 6th. That's going to be over on Sunday 99.7. Teresa and Tom Hildreth will have the 1A sectional from Ogden there, and so that'll be over on 105.9 The Beach. The Manson sectional has Manson and Eagle Grove, Pocahontas area, some other teams.
probably
in
Emmitsburg too.
I can't remember who else is in it off without looking at the list, but it's area flavor for sure. Then
I think me and the mayor did that last year.
No, you didn't do it last year.
Maybe it was the year before. Then.
You might have done it the year before last, but remember, because I asked you about doing some wrestling last year. You couldn't do it or whatever because I was kind of looking for some people. February 13th, Fort Dodge has the district tournament for 3A hosting again. KC Miners and Mike Zalat are going to do that. KC has been working with us for a while, and his actual background is more wrestling. He does basketball and football too, but he's more of a wrestling guy. That's kind of where his background is, and he used to wrestle. So he's going to do that for us. And then Mike Zalat, who has a little background in coaching wrestling. He's currently the baseball coach over at St. Edmund. Cross-country coach. Mike's a great guy, and I know he knows the technical end of wrestling too, and will be able to help us there. So we're going to have that. And we are planning not only to have that on the radio on February 13th, the Fort Dodge District, on 92 Rock over here, but we're also planning on doing a whole video production of that and doing it through StreamYard, having it on our Facebook page. And
let me know about that so we can talk about it over here. Definitely. I remember now why I didn't want to do wrestling. You asked me to do wrestling for a certain school, and I said, well, I'll do the home meets here in town. Maybe it was Fort Dodge.
Okay. And I had guys that were already kind of had dibs on.
I didn't want to drive in winter at night. I mean, you're a warrior of truth over there. They're going down into Des Moines when it's cold as hell and snowy. And
I just go where the game is. Wherever the game is, I'm going to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in my younger days, of course, we go to Waterloo or the old Big 8 conference. And sometimes I couldn't get home.
Well, and I have that fear too. I've battled.
Wasn't because of the weather, Rob. I just couldn't. I couldn't get home.
No, I've never had that issue. Let me go ahead and get that out of the way. But no, we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. We're looking forward to having that from a video standpoint too. Kind of the first time that really anybody's done that. So we're looking at that, and there's going to be a lot of moving parts to that, but we feel like we could get it done, and we're going to be ready to go for it. And I'm going to be involved in some of that, and not so much on the air, but a lot of the production type of end of that. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And I think, it's a big undertaking, but I think we can pull it off, and I'm looking forward to doing it for the people. And I know it's something that people are going to enjoy, to be able to see it.
Boy, if you could get that done, that'd be terrific. That'd be terrific.
Looking forward to it.
Rob Joe's been our guest. Thank you, Rob.
And thank you, Mike.
All right. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice for Dodge.
Michael Devine at AM 1400 KVFD.
Listen to this.
Making radio great again.
It's 240. Agriculture is essential, and so is the Iowa Ag Expo to farmers and producers. Don't miss your chance to see all the latest technology, equipment, and ag services to increase